everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar with Paymerang by KwikTag. Joining us today, we have Tiffany. So a huge thank you to her for presenting. And with that being said, I will hand things off to you, Tiffany.
Allie, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be with the TM group today, highlighting how you can automate D365 Business Central within the AP department, leveraging artificial intelligence. Love having everybody here today, and I'm super excited to see Kristen Campbell on the line. Kristen Campbell manages our SimplyAP solution. That is our AP solution for D365 Business Central. Hi, Kristen, how are you?
Hi, everyone. Good. How are you? Good afternoon.
Awesome. Love it. She is our client success manager. This product is near and dear to her and I's heart, and it's a pleasure to have her on here. She's going to be able to fill in some blanks as we're going through here, just to add to the benefits of automating the AP process in Business Central. Today, what we're going to cover really is who we are and why we work with TMG. What are the reasons behind the value in automating? Obviously, we're going to dive in deep. We're going to look directly at our invoice automation solution that's been built exclusively for D365 Business Central and what benefits you can expect to experience as you leverage this solution. We don't stop just with the invoice component. We want to automate the entire process within AP. So that's all the way from invoice capture to payment reconciliation. We're also going to dive directly into the payment automation component. We're going to wrap things up with some customer success stories so you guys really can better understand exactly what automation is going to look like post-implementation. In terms of who is KwikTag by Paymerang and who is Paymerang, KwikTag's been around for about 25 years, doing document management and AP automation exclusive to the Microsoft Dynamics channel. So it's all flavors of Dynamics, Business Central, GP, AX, F&O. You know, that document management AI automation component, we really zeroed into the invoice automation component specific to Business Central and GP in the last few years. And with that, attracted somebody such as Paymerang. They did acquire our company about 5-6 months ago. And the beautiful part there is it really allows us to go the full cycle, end to end. Invoice automation as well as payment automation. We'll take a peek at that a bit here in just a moment. What we like to say here is better together. Obviously, we want that entire cycle automated, but with these two organizations combined, we're processing over 48 million documents on an annual basis, and over $15 billion in payments are being funded each year. Really exciting opportunities to ensure that you're leveraging technology that's tried to true, tested, and mature in the space. One last thing to highlight here, and I love this, is Kristen can attest to this as well. We have US-based customer support. Kristen, do you mind sharing just a little bit about how SimplyAP has support embedded directly within the application?
Sure. We do have a help function within the application, of which offers everything from videos, tutorials, different help sites, etc. We do have a live chat, so you will not be communicating with a bot. And as Tiffany was saying, because KwikTag has been around for quite a while in the dynamic space, you're literally going to be speaking to someone that has been in that space for a long time, that really knows our full line of doc management, AP automation solutions. There's also an email within SimplyAP for support that is available for reply and help from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. We really try to make that support and that availability really great for all of our customers and available, there to support you.
I'll try not to hit the live chat button during our demo today, because the last time I did that, they were like, Tiffany, is everything okay? We were thinking maybe you were demoing. So they're monitoring it 24/7.
I've done that as well. So I learned my lesson as well.
Love it. Just to kind of, again, reiterate who KwikTag by Paymerang is. Again, that better together message, invoice automation, all the way through to the payment component. Obviously, we're leveraging that intelligent capture, data extraction integrated seamlessly with Business Central. Configurable workflows. Upon approval, we're automatically creating those transactions in Business Central. And the beautiful part here is with this marriage with Paymerang, we now can also automate that payment process. And with D365 Business Central, it is one solution, one UI in order to leverage the payment automation component. Super exciting to ensure that those vendors are being paid the way that they want to be paid, as rapidly as possible, as efficiently as possible, with the least amount of risk, right? Why automate? Obviously, this has been in the space for a very long time, the benefits of leveraging artificial intelligence within the AP process. So let's get down to the details of it. What we see is over 84% of the AP team is their day is typically filled with very mundane, repetitive tasks. The data entry tasks, the cutting of checks, the stuffing of the envelopes, the postage, the mailing. What we want to do is really streamline this process to ensure that the team can free up time to do more meaningful tasks. As we do that, as we free up their time, what you're able to do is reduce cost and also ensure that that team is focusing on maybe more strategic initiatives. And the one element that I love in terms of what brings KwikTag and Paymerang together is in terms of mitigating risk. As you automate payments, you're able to really start leveraging different payment methods versus the check. A check produces about 66% in fraud versus a virtual card. You have less than 3% chance of experiencing fraud with a virtual payment. Again, a lot of efficiencies that can be gained leveraging that artificial intelligence automation built into your application. All right, today, obviously, we've got the full gamut. I'm going to start with focusing on the invoice automation portion, the ability to capture that invoice, extract the data, leveraging artificial intelligence, match it back to Business Central, initiate a workflow, perform your coding, and then we'll wrap things up definitely with the payment automation component. This is SimplyAP, again, AP automation exclusively for D365 Business Central. And when I log in here, I'm in as an AP super user. I see a tremendous amount of data in this view. The beauty about this is no one's touched this information yet. Well, especially if we look at things that are just new in the queue. Nobody's touched these. And what's happened is in this grid view, you see a tremendous amount of data, vendor information, the type of invoice, the amount, who's it's been assigned to, due dates. And the reason being is that our application, as we ingest that invoice, we're going to run it through our AI tool for data extraction and matching. This has all been done behind the scenes before AP even touches an invoice. Now, there are a couple ways you can get invoices into the system. You can certainly browse out to a file on your machine and grab it that way. The most common way that invoices come into our system is through email. You probably have an AP inbox set up today, maybe AP invoices at yourdomain.com. You would simply establish a forward to ensure that we're ingesting those invoices real time from your vendor. Now, if you look at this date received column over here, 11/2, these are invoices that I sent in just before the demonstration started. So I'm just sorting on most recent time frame. So as I click into this invoice, it's going to highlight in the center portion everything that's been extracted off that invoice and matched and validated against Business Central. On the right-hand side, you see a digital version of the invoice as well. Within one view, you can start to do your comparison and validation. Now, we do have a concept of claiming invoices, and we do that because we realize quite often there are multiple people working a queue of invoices. So as I claim, you'll notice now all of the invoices have been illuminated. I can interact within them. But the other component that really is going to streamline the behavior for the AP team is our color coding system. It's kind of like a traffic light, right? Green, go. We have a high capture confidence rating. If it's yellow, that means we're not sure. We want to draw AP's attention to it. If it's red, we need AP to look at that field. And there could be a myriad of reasons why. I'll show you a sample invoice like that because not everything's going to come in perfect, but it could be the letting, right? Super tight letting on an invoice. Can we discern an 8 from a 0? But we're going to focus AP's attention on those fields with that color coding. In this instance, all of that header information was captured accurately and matched back to Business Central to validate that vendor information. If you did have multiple vendor IDs, absolutely, you could still pop into this field and query, and we leverage type ahead so you could grab a different vendor ID for the same vendor. But in this instance, the only element that's popping up red is the fact that we need to code. We need to allocate $492 to the appropriate accounts. I'm going to go ahead and minimize the digital version of the invoice so we can work through the coding components. The beautiful part that you see here is that we are defaulting exactly how this invoice was coded last time around. It's called intelligent coding. We want to ensure that, again, we're streamlining the AP's department. They've not had to do the data entry on anything in this invoice thus far, but we also want to say, hey, this is how you processed it last time. That's obviously going to help reduce errors, especially as you're onboarding new people into the AP team. They can see exactly how it was coded last time, as well as minimizing those keystrokes. So in this instance, we split the invoice across equipment and prepaid rent, but you'll notice there's some other fields in here. And this is definitely based on your configuration and your setup in Business Central. Maybe you're a service organization and you leverage jobs and job tasks. You could absolutely allocate a portion of the invoice or split the invoice across multiple jobs, just that simply. In this particular configuration, we're leveraging a third-party add-on binary stream mem for multi-entity management. Here you'll notice the last time I split this invoice across 2 different companies or entities. We'll switch this between both Houston and Phoenix. Obviously, you've got your other dimensions here that are defaulting in here. The last time I coded this invoice, I did split it between salespeople. So again, that's being pre-populated to streamline the process for AP. Now, I'm going to do one other element here. I'm going to assign this job category as well. You can assign dimensions at the header level. This is the default here for this particular vendor. You can certainly add comments. T group is the best, and we can make comments. You can see the history. And the beautiful part about the history that I do want to spend 1 second on here is I mentioned that I sent the invoice in before our call started today. We do have a forward setup on an AP inbox here that we use in our demo environment. The document was received right here at 8:50 a.m. But the document also was ready for review by the AP team at 8:50 a.m. What I want to highlight for you there is that our ability to extract the data off those invoices, match it to Business Central, and put it back into the queue for review and approval, either by AP or maybe your business, whatever your workflow configuration is, rapid fire. Less than 60 seconds, this invoice had all the data extraction, matched, verified, and in queue, ready to be processed. So it's extremely powerful as it relates to the AI. Now, in my instance today, I'm going to leverage the default workflow and get this invoice off for review and approval. So Cece, one thing that I absolutely love about our application is we leverage this default workflow to ensure no invoices get missed. But wait a minute, I had an error. I may have done it intentionally, guys. First, the job task is required. If you are going to, and that's just a requirement within Business Central, if you're going to split an invoice or if you're going to allocate a job to a particular transaction here, you got to include the task. Other element that I forgot to do is actually split the amount because I've still got that red error up there of the coding. Watch, as I tab off this field, boom, I now have 0 difference and I can submit it for review. As I submit for review, again, I'm using that default workflow. And in this instance, what we're going to see here is, let's pop this back. There we go. In this instance, if my invoice had been over a certain amount, over $500, a dollar threshold, it would go to the next reviewer in the cycle. But please note, workflows are highly configurable on our application. They can be by company, they can be by department, they can be, what am I forgetting? Something,
Nothing.
I'm sure.
The only thing I was going to note is when Tiffany added that $400 in for the equipment line, it does automatically present you with the difference of the 9280, which I think is pretty cool, right? It's actually doing the math for you. And then you know that the 9280 is what's left that's required for coding for those costs. But no, you're not missing anything else so far. We're good.
Fantastic, fantastic point. I love it. Obviously, you're not going to do this in production. I'm going to review and approve this invoice. I can see the comments that were noted. I obviously can see all of the accounting at the account tab here. And I'm just going to say, okay to pay. I do not have to leave a comment, guys, whatsoever. And also one thing to note is it is configurable. You'll see here as a reviewer, I have no edit rights. It's locked down. I can only give comments, approve, or reject. If I reject, a comment is required, but this is configurable. You can absolutely allow your reviewers and approvers to update coding if that's your desired process. I'm going to go ahead and approve. And with that, the invoice is out of my queue. It's no longer here because in that instance, the last stage of workflow has been completed. It's already been sent to Business Central, and we'll pop over here into Business Central. We are in the purchase invoice. That's where we're creating transactions. And I'm going to just sort to the most recent invoice that's come in. Here it is, interiors for $492. As we click into that invoice, again, real time, based on on our connectivity with your Business Central environment, we're creating that transaction. Here it is for interiors, $492. But let's look at all the lines here. It is split across the 2 different companies that I notated, Phoenix and Houston. I've got my equipment and rent. I also have those job and job task numbers that have been pulled forward, as well as the salesperson. Obviously, if there were any other dimensions that needed to be coded to, that would have been populated as well, but that's what we selected for today's case. Real-time created upon that last stage of approval. We also have an extremely light footprint within Business Central. We're in the fact box, SimplyAP, one click back to the approved transaction. You'll see here now the status has been updated to created in an ERP. And again, it's locked down. Now this time it's locked down because we've already created the transaction. But now you're one click from your Business Central environment to the actual digital version of the invoice, all the details, the comments, as well as the history. And if we go back to the history yet again, if we take a peek at these last 3 line items at 9/16, Tiffany, I approved that, SimplyAP approved it, again, validating everything was correct in the system, and we created that purchase transaction directly within the ERP. Pretty cool stuff, right, DC?
Yes.
Also,
Also
to apologize, we call Kristen Campbell. It's kind of fun. She's the client success manager, Kristen Campbell, but we do call her C all the time.
Yeah, that's a nickname that stuck with me for about 20 years. I just carried it on into QwikTag. The one thing I was going to note is too, if you notice, once that is created in Business Central, your status is going to change to created in ERP. And a great way to search for those particular invoices that were already created in Business Central is through the advanced search. Just a little note there to add.
You're good. Advanced search is real-time connected to the Business Central environment. In this instance, I'm leveraging binary stream multi-entity management, but that's one instance within Kronos. If I had multiple companies, I can select from those. I can select the vendor information, absolutely. Statuses, due dates, types of invoices, PO versus non-PO. We want to make it super easy for you to be able to access those invoices.
Yeah.
I'm going to bounce back into Business Central. And I noted that I sent invoices in before our demonstration started today. And this is the case of an invoice that I forwarded in already today. It's Big 5. And how did this Big 5 invoice get created in Business Central? We're going to look at it in detail here. We created an invoice for $6,090 here. Why? I'm going to go to SimplyAP to view, and we'll get into the detail behind it. Again, it's created in the ERP. It's locked down because we've already created the transaction in the application. I never saw this invoice in my queue because we're leveraging something called straight-through processing within the application. If we have a match of the invoice to the purchase order and the receipts, we can automatically create that transaction in the ERP. And that's what we did in this case. So notice here, it says PO matched $6,090, 0 difference. How did it do this? I'm going to minimize for just a second. We're going to scroll over here. So SimplyAP extracts every element off of the invoice. Not only do we extract the header information, but we also extract the lines. In this section here where it says invoice, we're reading all of the detail from the body, the line items in the invoice, the description, the price, the quantity, and the amount. That's all captured here and presented for whomever to be able to view in one easy view alongside of exactly what is in Business Central associated to the PO. This is all the PO specifics. But additionally, the third element here that allows you to facilitate the straight-through processing on a 3-way match is the receipts. In this instance, the invoice was for exactly what the purchase order was, the quantities as well as the price, and we have received these materials, 10 in each of these categories. We have a match. And with that, we are able to auto approve the invoice and create it in the ERP. Earlier, I mentioned I sent the invoices in at 8:50 in the morning. The document was received. Document received 8:50. It was also approved by SimplyAP at 8:50. And then the purchase invoice was created in the ERP at 8:50. Pretty powerful stuff in order to leverage the SimplyAP straight through processing to ensure that AP is truly focusing on those invoices that are exceptions. There is no need for AP to come in here and do that stare and compare when we know that the invoice is matching. Now, we do know that that also may be be a slight stretch, right? For somebody that's new to artificial intelligence. If you're not leveraging data extraction today, don't worry. This is a configurable setting. This is the invoice approval tolerance. And actually in our instance, we have it set up to auto approve an invoice to a purchase order and receipts if it's within 2%, but not to exceed $50. And that's configurable. You can come in and say 1% not to exceed $15. You also can turn it off and you're more comfortable. You see every invoice. You see how well the tool is extracting the data and matching it back to Business Central. Now I've gone down the wrong path, or the right path, but maybe not the right time. We are always happy to schedule personal demonstrations with Kristen Campbell, and she'll walk you through the configuration, all your workflow options. You can configure workflows until your heart's content, specific to companies, specific to vendors, specific to invoice types, departments, and groups. A lot of flexibility. We're happy to walk through all those configuration options with you for sure. I always love being able to highlight straight through processing within SimplyAP. It's definitely a competitive advantage of ours in the marketplace. To get back through it and highlight what you can anticipate experiencing with SimplyAP is a smarter, fully integrated artificial intelligence seamlessly connected to your Business Central environment. You just saw how powerful that matching component is. Auto creation of transactions. And that really fosters the automation of your processes. 100%, you can have a touchless process in the vein of the three-way PO match, but you also have the flexibility to configure those workflows to ensure that the right eyes are on those invoices. You can configure those workflows to ensure that your business rules and processes are being validated through the approval process in SimplyAP. And I did say right eyes, and what's really important here is that's right, you can have unlimited users within our application. Whomever needs to have eyes on invoice is certainly going to have the access to do so. Other elements is that there is zero onboarding cost with our solution. Cece talked a little bit about kind of our customer care team and the fact that we've got support from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. That's for setting up your application as well. And we do have an extremely rapid time to solution. We built SimplyAP in the cloud for BC Online to ensure that we can connect to your BC environment rapid fire, your chart of accounts, your dimensions, your jobs, your companies. But with that speedy onboarding process of just a couple hours to connect, default workflows so you can start processing invoices so rapidly, we don't charge an onboarding cost, obviously not justified. As well, in terms of the affordability category, this is priced solely based on the number of invoices you are processing per month. And that way, we want to ensure all organizations, anybody that's leveraging Business Central, has the ability to access an AI-based data extraction tool fully integrated into BC. Cece, do you mind giving in scenarios, maybe just one or two examples of what they could anticipate? We definitely want to speak to that SMB market, ensuring that the affordability is there for them.
And if we want to talk about like integration / affordability, I think we heard this a lot, right, at the Summit conference, that a lot of people kind of came by our booth, right, and we're expecting to pay for integration, to pay for support, to pay for that assistance in getting SimplyAP up and running, but you're not charged for that because we do make it very, very simple and very quick. Our typical onboarding time is under 3 hours, and that's divided between a business session and a technical session. And that kind of goes, I like to say, it kind of goes hand in hand with the pricing, right? Because the integration is so simple and is so quick that we don't charge for it. As Tiffany mentioned, we're charging per invoice. We're not charging per user, but we're also not charging you for integration, for support, for any of those enhanced features that we'll be adding. I think that really kind of is a great testament to SimplyAP, along with, as Tiffany said, that automatic data extraction that's done right out of the gate. You're not having to hover over a field and wait for that data to be extracted, only to find out that that data was not extracted accurately. You're not waiting for it, and you're not presented with that really poor data. We're really extremely accurate, but we're also doing it automatically for you before those invoices land in the queue. With this slide, everything kind of ties all in together, especially with regards to integration and affordability. And then obviously our seamless integration with Business Central allows you, like Tiffany showed you, to flip back and forth, right? To flip from that invoice that's created in Business Central back into SimplyAP, see everything that you've done, see that history for auditing purposes, still have that digital image available for you to view as well. So I think they kind of all tie in together, but I believe that really strongly believe in the data migration and the no charge for integration, and also the fact that we keep that integration very tight, very simple, and we keep it traditionally under 3 hours is what we're seeing. So I really feel like those are our greatest benefits for SimplyAP.
I love that. I love the firsthand information in terms of the client experiences that she's having. Kind of the last bullet point that I was hovering over there was ease of use. And hopefully you saw that as we demonstrated there. But with ease of use, CC, we do have a free trial. Kind of jumping onto the ease of connectivity and onboarding, because you can get connected to your BC environment so quickly. We want to ensure that you have the ability to test things out on your own behalf, process your own invoices through the solution, code to your chart of accounts, your GLs, your dimensions.
Right.
That
And
free trial
also
is definitely available.
Right. And also, along with the experience of getting SimplyAP integrated once you purchase it, the same holds true for the trial, right? We do make it really easy for you to set up that trial of SimplyAP. We walk you through with a bunch of different videos and tutorials. But again, we're always here for support. It's US-based support. We're here to help you really test it out before you buy it. You can send some invoices in, see how they perform, see how quick and how accurate that extraction and that matching component is. We really try to make it simple, but also provide you with that support along the way to get it up and going, for sure.
Awesome, awesome. Now we got to close the loop though, right? We've talked about the ability, the flexibility, and the power of the invoice automation. That transaction is now created in Business Central, but you also need to make the payment, right? How do we get these vendors paid as rapidly as possible, as efficient, as cost effectively? And again, the beauty of QuikTag by Paymerang is that Paymerang has been in this payment space for over 20 years, and they are making over $15 billion in payments in the year. And what we would do in this situation, and the beauty here is, while it says in the screen here how it works, you upload. On the SimplyAP side of things, there's not going to be an upload there. That is one UI, one user interface that we're bringing in Q1. If you were to start today, yes, an upload, but we're super excited that it'll be a seamless one solution, one user interface to be able to access not just your invoices, but all those payment batches. As we are presented with that payment batch, you're going to fund the account for the amount, obviously, of that payment batch. And then we go to work remitting payments to your vendors. And a huge competitive advantage for Paymerang here is that we will pay your vendors how they want to be paid. Is it a small shop? They can't accept a virtual card. They don't want to set up ACH. That's too complex. They're concerned about security and privacy, and they don't want to give out that account information. Will we still cut checks? 100%. And they will be private label. They look exactly like they're still coming from you, even though they're drawn on a Paymerang account. The beauty of that, obviously, is that reduces your risk, right? It's drawn on a Paymerang account. We're definitely securing that payment process even more for you at that point. Again, we'll cut those checks, make it private label. It'll look exactly as it looks today. We will transition a portion of your vendors, hopefully, to a more rapid form of payment, less risk involved, but also we'll look to the virtual card. A lot of vendors really prefer that virtual card. We've got over 700,000 vendors in our database that will be able to match against your vendor list. So we can determine how are we paying them today and how best to pay them going forward, making recommendations, calling them and verifying their information to see, would you like to receive an ACH payment or a virtual card payment? Because in many times they really want to go down that path, because they want to be paid fastest, right? And that's one way that they can ensure the speediest of payments. The beautiful part here, though, is because you're actually just funding that total payment batch amount, you only have one reconciliation to do. We're going to do the individual reconciliations for each of the payments that we're making to your vendors. We've got that set up completely here. If it's a check and that check has not been cashed within 21 days, we're doing the reconciliation. We're calling that vendor to find out what's happened and what complexity, what do we need to do, reissue, etc. The other benefit here, obviously, as you are automating that payment process, as I mentioned, we are going to see if we can find a more efficient, more cost-effective, less risky payment method. If we are able to transition a portion of those payments to a virtual card, you can participate in cashback rewards, right? As we look at those virtual cards and credit card rebates that are out there, that will be available to you as well. What you're ultimately going to get is we're going to extend that efficiency, not just within the invoice component, but all the way to the payment piece. You're no longer going to be cutting checks, stuffing envelopes, going to buy stamps, stamping each of those envelopes and getting things into the mail stream. You're also not going to be doing that follow-up process in terms of, hey, why is this check still outstanding? Why is this payment still outstanding? We'll be doing that for you on your behalf. Security component is huge. I spoke to it at the top of the call, or the top of our session here today. Checks have a 66% fraud rate on them. I mean, that is the most fraudulent payment method in this space here today. A virtual card less than 3%. No, we're not going to get everybody to go that direction. You may have some vendors that you don't actually even want us to alter the existing process. That's okay too. But we do want to find the most efficient methods, whether that is a virtual card, more efficient methods, and the fact that we're doing that reconciliation even if a check has not been cashed yet. And as you can imagine, as we're receiving that payment batch and you're sending your payment, we're going to be able to start making payments to those vendors in less than 24 hours to ensure that they are being paid timely. Our support team is always here, readily available for you, much like what people have experienced for years within the KwikTag space. It's all US-based support, and truly in the space, what we're considered is a really white glove service here at Paymerang, kind of the Nordstrom, if you would, of the payment automation space. We see that there's great value in automation and artificial intelligence and technology. You get a lot of that as it relates to us matching and being able to validate that this is a correct vendor. But we also pride ourselves in the people on our team. We pick up the phone and call if we see something different on an invoice. The security protocols and measures in place are constantly centered around verifying that vendor information, verifying any changes that we're seeing on an invoice with a phone call to make sure that you're not at risk whatsoever. I like to kind of close the payment component out with really a quote from one of our customers here. Paymerang turned our AP process into a profit center. Yes, they were able to convert a portion of their vendors to those virtual cards. They started earning rebates to offset any of their payment costs, but also generate some additional revenue. And they've eliminated the check printing, the envelope stuffing, and the following up on those uncashed checks. You've got the ability to take automation end-to-end, invoice capture, all the way through payment reconciliation. And what we've seen is customers having tremendous success. At the beginning, we talked about 84% of an AP person's time is stuck in very rudimentary, mundane, repetitive tasks. Not the case as you launch artificial intelligence integrated directly into your application. We've talked about why, right? Why you get greater visibility. You can reduce your risk in terms of the validation. You're going to free up time all day long, right? So let's see exactly what American Software experienced a year after implementing our application. One other element about these guys is they definitely leverage binary stream mem. Their company has been in a growth mode for quite some time, and they do it via acquisitions. They were constantly adding new entities into their organization. They needed obviously to be able to rapid fire onboard a new company and layer them into the process to ensure invoices were being paid timely. And unfortunately, they weren't when they came to us. The AP team had a bit of a bad rap. No invoices were getting paid on time. Vendors were frustrated. Vendors were actually stopping deliveries. Obviously, it was creating a lot of chaos, and things were coming directly down onto the AP team. Why can't we do better? How can we streamline this for our team as well as our vendors? A year after implementing our solution, they were able to equate over $100,000 in savings to the bottom line. And I'll get to it in terms of what led them there. 90% of their steps were eliminated. I mentioned multiple entities. In some instances, some of the new companies, they were actually FedExing and UPSing envelopes of invoices. Think about the time that was lost and the money that was spent, just that alone. Then they had to go back in and scan and then send it out via email to those teams for approval. They were trying to manage invoices in email inboxes and share drives. They were printing things. They were inter-office mailing things. There was a tremendous amount of steps eliminated as they were able to capture invoices electronically, real time, and layer in workflows that were configurable unique to their businesses, the multitude of the companies and entities that they had. They are able to equate 80 to 90% of the processing time reduction. They've saved 80 to 90% in that processing time. They went from invoices being approved in days, sometimes weeks, to minutes and hours. And they are fantastic. They set up their nagging reminders, and they don't let the grass grow underneath your feet there. Their nagging reminders are configurable, and they give somebody a day to approve an invoice. They get a nagging reminder. At the end of that, after that day, if they do not respond to the nagging reminder, they will automatically move it into somebody else's queue within 2 days. That's configurable. That's your flexibility within the application to ensure that things are processed timely, ensure that you're making a more efficient decision for not just your AP team, but for the business group. With all these efficiencies that they were able to gain, they actually were able to redeploy a resource within their AP department. And in this instance, this gal really had some very lofty career goals, loves the organization there at American Software, and was able to transition into a different department. And she did so gladly and happily because she knew she was leaving her AP team in a fantastic position. At the end of that year, AP, who kind of had a bad rap, and vendors weren't being paid timely, and not only was the business frustrated, but vendors were frustrated, they were awarded an Operational Excellence Award for all of the efficiencies that they were able to build. They also eliminated all the printers except for one on an entire floor for their finance team. So a huge compliment to them. Bravo to leaning in, leveraging artificial intelligence integrated seamlessly into Business Central. With that, Cece, do you mind highlighting maybe some of the common questions that you get for the group here? I know we're going to have a lot of people viewing this at a later date. Any common questions that you think we should highlight here?
I would say some of the questions that we get obviously are at a high level, making sure that we can handle both PO and non-PO invoices, making sure that there's no limit to the volume of invoices that we can support, which there's not, or also the volume of users, right? There's no limitation on users. As far as the workflow, I think it's being able to set up those user approval thresholds, right, within SimplyAP. A lot of our prospects are doing that very manually, right? That whole process is manual. But within SimplyAP, you can set up those thresholds. For example, if I can't approve an invoice over $50,000, then it's going to go to the next approver that can approve that amount of invoice, right? You can set that all up right out of the gate and really make that whole workflow process very streamlined. We definitely do get questions like, can we support dimension coding, which Tiffany showed you? We definitely get questions about binary stream mem. We've most recently had the request to support job codes and tasks, which Tiffany showed you that we've added within SimplyAP. Those are just some that I can think of. I think the intelligent coding has definitely been asked about months prior, and that is something that we instituted in SimplyAP because our prospects that are processing the non-PO invoices wanted to obviously do as much, or I should say as little manual coding as possible. Being able to, for SimplyAP, being able to remember how that invoice was coded the last time really just allows them to only have to split that cost, like Tiffany showed you, between the line items. You're really not keying as much information in, which even further reduces the errors that possibly could occur. That was obviously a feature that was very well received and was requested. I'm trying to think if there's anything.
I love it. I love the stream of consciousness there because I was at a blank of some common questions. One that we definitely get is, do you support only BC Online or do you support on-prem? We do support on-prem Business Central, fully integrated with our SimplyAP solution. I will say that is not a zero onboarding implementation. It's a little bit more complex to connect to an on-prem version. We can support it. Cece and her team are absolutely happy to connect, scope that so you can understand exactly what your implementation cost would be.
And just to add to that, they just have to be on 19.5 version or higher for us to support on-prem. For example, we had a prospect yesterday that was only on 17.3, and they're not looking to go to a more recent version because they're moving to the cloud. right? In that case, they'd have to wait until they move to BC in the cloud. You definitely have to be at that 19.5 or greater. And if you are, then we absolutely can support it. And like Tiffany said, we'll just scope that out for you from a services standpoint. It's not a huge deal. It's just a conversation with services and myself on the phone. So yes, that is definitely a question that we get. That's a good point. And we can support both. We just have to make sure it's the right version.
Correct. One other question that I get a lot as I'm doing the payment automation component is obviously we're new. We were just acquired a few months ago. It's beautiful that we can do both now. The implementation process is a little bit lengthier on the payment side. It's about a 4 to 5 hour process that usually spans about 3 hours. And that's really to ensure that we understand your best practices or your internal controls within your financial department, the treasury component, right? That is probably about a 4 to 5 hour engagement. Typically takes about 3 weeks. That's only because obviously we can run faster, but you guys have day jobs too, to ensure that we set up all the appropriate processes to facilitate the payment automation component, the onboarding of the vendors, receipts of funds, reconciliation components, but still very rapid time frame. We just want to make sure that we pull all the appropriate parties in, whether that's your controller and your CFO, specific to the treasury elements. Right. Well, thanks so much for being here today. Allie, TMG Group, thank you so much for having us. We greatly appreciate the ability to support our partners specific to how you can extend the ROI, extend the benefits of Business Central with tools such as SimplyAP and Paymerang for payments. Thanks for having us today.
Thank you guys so much. I
Thank
hope
you.
everybody has a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. You as well.
Thanks, Allie. Bye-bye.
Thank you.